on this week's edition of Take Control of Your Golf Game, we're going to talk a little bit about chipping, about playing the low game, keeping the ball closer to the ground to be more consistent with our shot. Now, we talked a little bit about pitching last week, but now we're going to get into the shot that I believe needs to be utilized more often, and most people try to shy away from it because they want to hit that fancy high lofted flop shot. I recommend playing this shot because it is more consistent. Now, I'm going to give you a technique that the late, great Seve Ballesteros utilized. Phil Mickelson utilizes it too when he's on Bermuda grass down in Florida or over in Texas. So this technique, the reason that we're going to use it, and the reason he uses it down here in Florida instead of up north, now the grass is a little bit different down here. So we have Bermuda grass. Now Bermuda grass sits a little lower to the ground, so that ball doesn't sit up real nicely like it's on a tee. It kind of sits down in a crevice a little bit, and then the ground is really soft as well. And so now what happens with that is if we activate that leading edge by leaning our shaft forward, that club will dig. It'll act like a shovel and dig in the ground, and we'll hit a lot of chunk shots. Now I know we've hit quite a few of our own. Well, that's over now. We're not doing that anymore. I'm gonna give you a technique that's going to prevent that from happening. So now what Seve Ballesteros does, if you take a look at this golf club, again, we've talked about bounce a lot in this series so far, and we're gonna talk about it again because it is so important to utilize it. So now on this golf club, you'll notice that the most bounce on it occurs near the toe of the golf club. So what we're actually gonna do with this technique is we're gonna get that toe more into the ground. And so if the club sits like that, we actually want to get our hands more vertical and get the shaft more vertical so that that toe sits in the ground. So now the reason we do that is because there's more bounce there, so that club really won't dig whatsoever when we utilize this technique. Now this is a great technique to use when that grass is growing into you and you go to swing that 56-degree sand wedge and it just sticks in there. I mean, we've all been in that position before. We'll take a less lofted club like a 9, an 8 iron, and put that toe in the ground. Get that shaft a little more vertical, and now that club gonna skip through there the way it's supposed to. It's gonna bounce right off of that by utilizing the bounce of the club. And so now with this setup, what you'll see is I'm gonna get closer to it, and I'm gonna take my putting stance, because contact is the most important. And what club do you think we make perfect contact with more often than not? You're right, it's your putter, right? It's not the driver, it's not the sand wedge. That putter we hit pier all the time. Well, why? Well, it's a simplified stroke. There's not a lot of moving pieces to it. So what we're gonna do here with this technique is instead of standing way away from it like this, we're gonna get much closer to that ball, and now we're gonna get that handle a little more vertical and get the shaft more vertical. We're gonna grip down on it, and we're gonna use just our putting stroke to hit this shot, all right? So now when I set up to it, I'm gonna get closer to it. I'm gonna put that toe in the ground. I'm gonna play that ball a little near the toe as well. So now that heel is off the ground. So if you try to play it near the heel, we're gonna catch that thing a little thin. So play that thing a little more towards the toe, get that club shaft a little more vertical, and then just put your putting stroke on it. And that thing's gonna come out pure solid contact each time. Now this thing is lie proof. It doesn't matter if I put it down on a hard pan dirt, if I put it in a divot, if I set it on nice grass, that ball's gonna come off consistently each and every time. Now what happens when we set our club face square like we normally would with a shot, especially with these clubs that are out there now, these game improvement clubs, that ball could launch and trampoline off that face with no spin, or it could come off with a ton of spin. And now all of a sudden that ball rollout is not very predictable. Well, when you play this thing near the toe, it kind of deadens the shot a little bit and doesn't put any spin on it. So you get a consistent ball rollout each and every time. And that's really what we're looking for, is we're looking for consistent contact and consistent predictable rollout. And if we have that, you better believe we're gonna be more consistent with our short game. We're gonna start to get that ball closer and closer to the hole so that we can make a whole lot more up and downs and make a whole lot more pars and have a whole lot more fun. So utilize this technique that Seve and Phil Mickelson both use, all right? Get that toe into the ground, get a little closer to the ball, get that shaft vertical, and then just put your putting stroke on it. And I promise you'll chip the ball closer and closer every day the more you practice this. Let's take control of your golf game today. Thank you so much for tuning in this week, and we will see you next week.